Hello, my name is Miriam Kaiwesh-Reeve and I am one of 6 development officers for Aberdeenshire Voluntary Action. AVA is Aberdeenshire's third sector interface, and our mission is to promote the growth of volunteers, charities, community-led organisations and social enterprises. Today we will be looking at a training session called The Nuts and Bolts of a Funding Application. The presentation will look at where you can find funding and advice, and will give you some ideas about how best to complete a funding application. Our training objectives today are to find sources of funding and funding advice and complete a funding application. By the end of the presentation, you should have the information you need to find sources of funding and what funders are looking for in a good application. The first thing you need to do is look at your project idea and start your planning. You'll need your project plan, budget, governing documents and annual accounts all ready before writing a funding application. To start building your case for support, you'll want to look at the following. What is the issue you want to address? Would you like to start a lunch club or offer some training for volunteers or upgrade your sports equipment? Next, you should consider why your project is needed. For example, are there a lot of elderly people living in an isolated rural area? Are there new guidelines around COVID-19, or do you need more equipment due to increased membership? Finally, have you collected any evidence of this need? Have you asked your community? If so, use this in your application to show funders there is support for the project and that you know your community. Now, in your own time, click on the image or follow the link to watch a short clip by the Institute of Fundraising about developing your case for support. There are lots of useful tips in this video. When writing a funding application, make sure the message shows how important your project is, as people will respond to a sense of urgency. Make sure your application is clear and concise and shows the benefits a donation will make. A powerful message encourages people to donate. When considering your case for support, you should look at what your group already does. Do you have any previous successes or awards? What skills and experience are there within the management committee? And include this information in your funding application, showing how you are a credible group and the best group to deliver this piece of work. You want your project and organisation to stand out from others. You may be asked what your planned outputs and outcomes are, so it is good to know the difference and to think about what they will be. Outputs are the actual activities, services or products provided. For example, a weekly lunch club for vulnerable older people in Rhynie. Outcomes are the longer term changes that will be seen as a result of these outputs. For example, improved diet and greater opportunity for social interaction that supports stronger mental health for vulnerable older people in Rhynie. For outcomes, think beyond the obvious. For example, you could have said that improved diet was the only outcome of the lunch club, but social interaction and improved mental health of visiting a lunch club might be less obvious. These additional outcomes will also allow you to expand your range of funders and funding options. When you think about your project outcomes, ensure they are significant, relate to the need and your organisation's core purpose. Consider how you will measure these going forward. Will you use a member survey or will you collect statistics? It is good to consider these things, as you may be asked to complete a post-award report by a funder if you are successful. Part of an application form will be about your organisation's finances and project budget. Your organisation must cover its costs to survive and make sure the budget fits with the rest of the application. You may be applying for revenue or running costs, which might include volunteer costs or food costs for a lunch club, and/or capital costs, which might include buying computers or other equipment. and you may be asked to provide quotes for these as part of a grant application. Ensure you include direct costs, for example, costs that you will actually incur as a part of what you're planning, and a proportionate share of your organisation's overheads, for example, heating and lighting costs for the length of time your activity will run each day. This might all seem a bit overwhelming. The National Lottery Community Fund website explains how to do this using the full cost recovery method. Some funders will ask for match funding when applying to them. This means you will need to raise a certain percentage of the money you require from other donations or grants. Match funding can also come from your organisation's own funds. In-kind match funding is a contribution of a good or a service other than money, such as volunteer hours. It can be given as a value and be included in the project budget. The calculation of your in-kind contribution is usually based on your best estimates. Groups should ensure their annual accounts are up to date and bookkeeping is done regularly to ensure good cash management and reporting. For projects which may continue beyond the lifetime of the funding, you may need to provide a plan for sustainability. This is how your group will carry on with its activities after the end of the grant you are applying for, or have an exit strategy in place. This often means ongoing fundraising activity. A fundraising strategy can help build a clear and realistic plan on how to fund your organisation's work for the future. Now, in your own time, click on the image or follow the link to watch a short clip about how to develop a fundraising strategy by the Institute of Fundraising. This film shows that a fundraising strategy allows for longer-term organisational planning to ensure funds can be raised to meet the costs of activities, services and products. Part of a fundraising strategy is monitoring and evaluating to ensure that you are providing the best service you can and to demonstrate this to funders, project users and the wider public. Monitoring is the collection of information about a project to check progress against plans. You may want to monitor success rates of applications, and are you on schedule for raising enough funds to meet a deadline? Evaluation is looking at whether you are making the difference you intended to. This will be useful for inclusion in any end of grant reports requested by funders. It is also important to regularly review plans and strategies and to adapt to any changes. Now, in your own time, click on the image or follow the link to watch a short film about some top tips about writing good funding applications from Foundation Scotland. Remember, you can always give the funder a call to discuss an application and to ask any questions you have. It's a good way of getting some insights into how to write your application successfully. Make sure you read the guidelines and check you are eligible to apply. Make sure your project matches the criteria and look at any exclusions. And always get someone to read over and check your application before submitting it. Now, let's start thinking about how to find a funder. Each funder will have their own criteria and funding streams, so it's a case of finding the ones that fit your need. Who can apply? Will depend on several factors. What is your group setup? Are you a registered charity, a constituted non-profit group, or a social enterprise, for example? What is your income level? How much funding are you looking for? Where are you based? What area of funding are you looking for? Health, sports, recreation, young, elderly, refugees, children, families, heritage, animal welfare? And who have you been funded by previously? Some funders will support revenue or running costs, and others will fund capital. Some funders will fund both types of costs, so it's a case of tailoring your application accordingly. Funding can be from local, regional or national organisations, and it's worth applying to several, as sometimes grants are simply oversubscribed. Here are some sources of funding for you to take a look at. Funding Scotland offers a free funding database where you can search for grants. Aberdeenshire Voluntary Action has a funding officer, Donna Speed, who can carry out free tailored funding searches, giving you ideas of where to apply. You can purchase the directory of grant-making trusts, and Foundation Scotland administers various Aberdeenshire and Scotland-wide grants. Here are some other funding sources and ways of finding funding for you to take a look at. Legacies and Memorial Trusts, using the Oscar website to search for trusts by postcode, town or area. Local community benefit schemes, for example wind farm funds. Using your guide to grants for the disabled. Using Google to search by type of funding or funding theme. And fundraising, like community events, donations and online platforms. And here are some examples of local, regional and national funders. As you can see, there's lots of trusts and foundations out there. And here are some useful links about funding, governance and more tips about writing good funding applications. Take your time and look through the links. You'll find some very useful information. Now you've reached the end of the training session. Thank you for listening and we hope you've enjoyed it. A reminder, AVA is Aberdeenshire's third sector interface and our mission is to promote the growth of volunteers, charities, community-led organisations and social enterprises. If you would like to request a free tailored funding search from our funding officer, contact Donna Speed by email donna.speed@avershire.org.uk. If you would like to develop your group further, your local development officer can provide assistance. Visit AVA's website to find out who they are. Finally, AVA membership is free and you can join following the link avershire.org.uk/join-ava.html. Thank you for your time.